Hey, what's up guys, it's Day here. Today we are back again for another SMITE tier list patch 5.13/5.14. Um, yeah, we are here. I'm a little bit late on this one, sorry guys, but let's just get into it. Starting off with Achilles, I think that Achilles with his recent 5.14 changes is an S- god. He's one of the better soul laners right now, for sure. Jungle, not as great, but he does fulfill the role of dive solo laner as well as like a frontline solo laner quite nicely. His recent passive changes give him more tankiness, and also his two changes also give him more tankiness as well as just more late game damage. So he's definitely doing more in the late game, which was his biggest weakness. He does have a slightly weaker early game, but mainly at his armor, which he doesn't even use early game. So Achilles is doing fine right now, especially with the resettable execute. Next up is Agni. Agni is an S- god as well. Definitely one of the strongest mages that you can play in ranked. He's got a strong early game, strong late game, good poke. Really no counters, like no counter matchups that he loses that badly. Poseidon he loses a bit, but not too much. Um, his bombs don't require too much setup, if any. He has setup for himself in his kit, with his first ability being an AoE stun. Most of his abilities are pretty easy to hit, the hardest being like a blind meteor at the edge. That might be the hardest, like max range blind meteor. But besides that, most of his abilities are relatively easy to confirm. And if you don't confirm the first meteor, you have your stun to confirm the second two. So you can deal a lot of damage with that. You have a lot of poke, your dash is super long range. Really just a strong mage in general. Next is Ama Zenkob. Ama Zenkob definitely has potential to be a higher tier hunter. What brings him back is his mobility. He has the lane clear, he has the boxing potential, and he has the damage. He lacks self peel and mobility, and because of this, he's not really valuable right now. He can be played, and if you have certain comps, you can play him. Especially with like if you have a Geb and you really need to balance out that lane clear. Geb AMC is a pretty strong duo because Geb can really peel for AMC really well, and then AMC can just dish out a lot of damage from his setup. So that's pretty important there. His ultimate being resettable is the main reason that he wins boxing matches. He will always have his ultimate if he hits it. So a good AMC player will always have his ultimate up, and you may or may not have your ultimate up at that time. That's why he's potent in the boxing match. Plus, he just gets early lane pressure because of his clear. So, pretty oppressive god in the dual lane if you let him be. Next up is Opwash. Opwash is actually A tier in my opinion. This is probably a surprise to some of you, but Opwash I think is pretty strong, especially with the recent changes to his first ability and his ultimate. He still lacks mobility. That hasn't changed, but what has changed is the fact that mages are being run in the solo more, and it's hard to punish mage solos, especially mage solos that build like Gem of Isolation. Those are really hard to punish, especially with like Gem of Isolation and having two corpses on his first ability, level 1, meaning that he's able to max out his corpse explosion sooner, meaning he has more burst sooner. Plus his ultimate now applies anti-heal and doesn't disappear upon death. All in all, just a super strong character right now against healers. Like, he's one of the best anti-healing mages out there. Next up is Amaterasu. Ama's interesting. She, in the support role, she does fine. She has tools necessary to be a pretty decent aggressive support, a warrior support, with her auras and the damage they provide. Her issue is like lack of CC outside of her ultimate. She has a silence, but that's usually single target unless they group up for it, and it's usually kind of like hard to confirm. Not hard to confirm, but like it's a really strange ability to use. So in the support role, she has a lack of CC before level 5, but once you get to level 5, you're fine. In the solo lane, she just has poor matchups. Like, a lot of the warriors you want to pick in solo lane are really bully oriented warriors, like Hercules, Cucullin, Achilles. They all like want to win lane super hard and just rotate before you can. And a Kokolin beating an Amaterasu in lane will have more of an impact in mid-game team fights than an Amaterasu who's losing lane. So that's something to consider. In the Guardian matchup, she's about even with most Guardians. Certain Guardians can outclear her, but she has good matchups into characters like Cerberus, where she can just silence out his clear. Sobek, it's a mediocre matchup. Sobek probably wins that one. There's not many other Guardians that are like played in this solo. Sobek, Kerberos, Athena. I think Athena wins that one. She can just rotate further. So against Guardians, most of them she doesn't have as much of an impact as the Guardians do. So she really is an awkward pick in the solo lane right now. And in the support role, she's fine. There are better supports, but she can be played. Next up is Onher. Onher is not that great. He gets early pressure, or he's supposed to get early pressure in the duo lane. The biggest issue with trying to do that is that his lane clear is not all that great, especially for an ability-based warrior. He has an issue where most other hunters will outclear him in the early laning phase. Like, even characters like Rom will outclear him, even though he has to... I mean, Rom's clear isn't bad, it's just like he has to be close to the wave, so most characters will outclear Honor, which really sucks for him because Honor wants to get the early trades going, but he can't get those early trades going because your wave, the enemy wave, is always pushing into your side. So they have body block potential and you don't. Honor from ahead is really hard to deal with as an ADC. Like, if you're boxing an Honor from ahead, you definitely lose early to mid game. Where he falls off is late game, where he lacks like a defined stim for his auto attacks. His one does boost the damage coming in on them, but it's really not enough, and his ultimate really falls off heavily when it comes to the damage category. Other ultimates just do more. Hui ultimate, Rom ultimate come to mind for like damage. If you want like safety, Artemis ultimate, Jingwei ultimate, those are both better. Honor's ultimate is looking for the early game boxing, but it's not that great, especially because he can't clear waves as fast as other hunters. He really struggles. Next up is Anubis. Anubis is pretty bad. Like, I don't know. I feel like he's B or C tier. I'll put him in B tier. We'll see. I think he's a little bit lower, but I'll just put him in B tier because he can stomp ranked games, but in competitive, he's dead 10 times out of 10. The enemy assassin will just look to dive you. You can use this to your advantage, maybe set up baits, but if you're behind as Anubis and the enemy is diving you a lot, then you're basically boned. Most higher level players will buy anti-heal into an Anubis, so the turn and burn factor that Anubis has and that makes Anubis so scary is harder to confirm with anti-heal. The biggest thing with Anubis is that he's really reliant on his wrap. If he doesn't get the wrap, he doesn't have any like CC to set up the rest of his kit. And since it's all tick based, if you don't get all of the ticks on, you're doing less damage than other mages anyway. So it's usually more beneficial to pick other mages. Especially since other mages like Giannis, like Agni, like Thoth are safer too, so Anubis is just not worth it for what he provides. Next up is Ao Kuang. Ao Kuang's been struggling recently, definitely. His jungle clear isn't as good as other assassins, and his blink initiations aren't as good as other assassins either. Right now, if you blink in as an assassin, you really want to immediately use your lockdown ability, whether that be like Neja Sash, or like, I don't know, what other characters use blink? Serket, like Serket, Cobra's Kiss, or maybe Susanoo's Jetstream. You just want to make sure your CC is applied to the opponent in order to blow them up. If it isn't, then, you know, you're not really providing much to your... You can't really, like, burst the enemy. So that's a big problem with Ao Kuang. Another is his reliance on his execute. Once he dives like the backline and tries to blow one of them up, if the backliner has beads and you try to execute to leave the fight, you're probably dead. So Ao Kuang needs to be ahead, or at least like have a couple forms of CC immunity in order to, you know, blow up the backline without any interruptions. And he also has to make sure that the enemy, like ADC or mid laner, doesn't have beads up in order for him to be truly successful. And right now, with Magi's cloak being super popular, and items like beads being a must buy on most squishies, it's really hard for Ao Kuang to do much. Next up is Aphrodite. She's meh. Like, she can function, but she's not the best, like, soul laner right now. Her lack of lane clear as a, like, mage really hurts her. Because as a mage, you want to clear the wave quicker than your opponent and try to poke him out with your auto attacks. Whether you have pressure or not, doesn't matter. You try to poke him. Aphrodite's lane clear is surprisingly weak for a mage. And she has to commit, like, 2 to 3 abilities. Even in the late game to make sure she can clear the wave safely. Her biggest claim to fame is her ability to synergize with dive-based assassins, like diving assassins like Robin and stuff, where she will kiss the Robin will ult in, he will do his damage, and then Aphrodite will use back off with Soul Reaver proc to deal even more damage and possibly secure the kill, and then she'll proceed to peel for the Robin with Lovebirds and her ultimate. The issue with that is right now Soul Reaver isn't nearly as strong as it used to be, especially if you don't have penetration. Soul Reaver does not as much damage as it used to, so it really hurts Aphrodite, and her only damaging ability that she's gonna like try to hit on the opponent is back off. So you're really like only getting like what 4% damage. That's not even true anymore. So a large part of her burst and a large part of the reason she's being picked is no longer there. She still does a lot of damage with back off. She just isn't as viable as other healers, especially since her heal is only on herself and one other target. Her ultimate's super strong, though. That's for sure. She does have a super strong ultimate. Next up is Apollo. He's alright. He's just a standard run-of-the-mill hunter. There's not much more to say. He's got a global ultimate, which allows him to split push. Next is Arachne. Arachne kind of struggles the same fate as Ao Kuang. She does have a lot of burst. In early mid-game, she's really scary, and her farming is super strong. Biggest issue with Arachne is that late game, her team fight is really weak. She's really like a 1v1 kind of boxer, and once you get like 2 to 3 people that you have to fight against, it's really hard for her to do anything. Supports will usually peel for their carries, and Arachne can't really blow through supports as easily as like squishies. I mean, that goes for any assassin, but Arachne in particular, she doesn't have much like tank shred opportunities, and also she really struggles in the team fights because she doesn't have much AoE damage either. So she really wants to like lock down a certain target and kill them as quick as possible, but if she can't do that because a support or a solo laner is peeling for them, it's really hard for her to have an impact in the team fight. So she's probably like a B tier, A minus. At least Ao Kuang doesn't execute. Next up is Ares. Ares is a character. He's pretty weak right now. He's really risky to pick because if you get behind early game, you're pretty much useless. You have to get pressure early on with the shackles, so you have to be super accurate with those. And if you're not, you're just kind of out of luck. You're at a loss there. Ares does provide that damage that other supports don't, but at a cost for like a large portion of CC. For example, his third ability is only damage, and his first ability is a root cripple. That's not root cripple, a slow cripple. So his only form of hard CC is in his ultimate, and that ultimate is really telegraphed and easy to beat. Yeah, you're burning beads, but you also have no CC outside of that, so you really have to draft a team comp around Ares, and that's not always viable, especially in ranked. He's a decent counterpick into characters that don't have CC immunity in their kits, like at least Guardians, because early game Guardians aren't too tanky. It's just that once come mid to late game, and if he's behind, he's really not having an impact in the team fights. Next up is Artemis. Artemis is super strong right now, in my opinion. I think that her new passive makes her a lot better because it's guaranteed damage over her like percentage crit damage. I think she does about as much DPS. No, she does more DPS with this one, like assuming the like crit chances are there, because it's crit boosts your auto attack damage by 100%, so it takes about 5 autos with her passive procced for her to do the same amount as 1 crit. But with her old passive, she was getting a crit about every 1 in 10 autos. Like, 1.5 of those autos would have crit. So she's doing more DPS now than she would have back then. And this is also guaranteed. You just might not crit with those 10 autos, so there's always that to consider. Artemis also has a lot of peel, self-peel, CC immunity in her ultimate, stun on her ultimate, root on her 1, cripple on her 1, movement speed on her 2, slow on her 3, 80% attack speed on her 2 for the turn and burn potential. She really just has a lot of like self-peel, deterrence for assassins to not dive her, and that's a pretty important thing for a hunter that's so immobile. The biggest part, I think, is her board that can just ping-pong around a team fight and swing it in your favor with that ping-pong. Once Artemis casts her ultimate, you really have to watch out and make sure that not everyone's getting hit by that. Otherwise, you guys are really... the team is really in for something else. It's really good at just causing chaos, so really strong ultimate on this character. Plus, her late game is just phenomenal with the 80% attack speed stim. Next up is RTO. RTO does fine in 2 roles. She's not high tier in either of them. In support, she struggles a little bit. She's similar to Ares that if you get behind, you're kind of screwed, especially because she has no ultimate. But with RTO, it's harder for her to lose pressure because she gets 2 abilities level 1 through 4. It's just that her level 5, she really doesn't have much, and that can be risky because so many Guardian ults are so strong. Like, Capri ult is strong, Ganesh ult is strong, Geb ult is strong, Athena ult is strong, Kumba ult is strong. There's a lot of strong, Guardian ults, and not having one of those can hurt your team a bit, especially in the support role. In the solo, she's also fine, but not the best. She has some weak matchups, and early game is, like, alright. Depending on the matchup, she'll either get lane pressure or she won't, so... she's okay. She's good at shutting down mobility-based comps, or comps that rely on, like, leaps and dashes. So, she's a pretty good counter pick, but not a very good, like, pick. Next up is Athena. Athena is one of the best, Guardians in the game. She can flex pick into both solo and support, being good at both roles. I think that she's better in solo, mainly because she only has 1 CC. I mean, sure, it's a 2-second taunt, but if you commit that to setting up for, your mage, their assassin's definitely going to look to dive your backline, and you really won't have much peel for that hunter or mage, depending on who the assassin's diving, once you commit your 2. So, there's that. From the solo lane, however, she's just super strong. You buy teleport, you ult into a fight, do the damn thing, and then teleport back to lane, allowing you to just miss out on very little farm, but also impact the team fight in a very, powerful way with your 2-second taunt. She also does a decent amount of damage and has a good enough clear to not lose lane too hard to many warriors. She'll probably still lose it, but if she does, she can try to look for, cheeky taunts under tower and, try to get some kills that way. Otherwise, she's alright. She's pretty good in both roles. I'd say a little overrated in support, but still definitely the best support character in the game right now. Next up is a Wheelish. She's okay. She definitely has potential. Right now, it's just that compared to other assassins, especially, she doesn't do as much. Primarily in the mid to late game, which is pretty valuable right now. Being able to siege and defend sieges is super important, and as an assassin, you dictate a lot of what goes down in that. Like a Thor, when he ults, will dictate whether or not the team wins or loses the fight. Same with Rat. Characters like Neja can try to remove a person from the fight. Wheelish doesn't feel like she has that same impact as other assassins late game, just because it's pretty situational and pretty it's more difficult to set up Wheelish ults and Wheelish knockups compared to other characters. She does synergize very well with knockups, and she does synergize against teams. She's a good counter pick into teams with a lot of leaps, so she's got that going for her. But you kind of really have to think about your comp and how many knockups you have on your team in order for Wheelish to thrive mid to late game, because it's going to be pretty hard for her to set up those like knockups on her own. Next up is Bacchus. Bacchus is alright. His lane clear really lets him down. He does have the ability to dive super hard. Like he's an assassin-esque support if you play him there, and that's really only where you can play him. You dive super hard on immobile characters, and then look for as much damage as possible on them with your ultimate combined with your mage ultimate. Biggest problem with Bacchus is the clear, but he also does lack peel for his team. He doesn't have as much peel as other Guardians do, so Guardians with peel are valued a lot right now, so Bacchus isn't all that great. Next up is Bakasur. Bakasur, he might rise in the meta. I'm not sure yet. From what I can see right now, he's alright. He's an okay character. He just has some problems, especially in the late game, where when you drop your ult, you're just going to get blown up before you can do as much damage as maybe you want to. Baka thrives off of like chaos in the battlefield, and if there's not a lot of chaos if the enemy team is coordinated, it's really hard for him to do what he wants to do. The biggest plus side for Baka is his ability to just move around the map early to mid game with his passive, as well as he builds movement speed, so he's zooming. His true damage early game is pretty hard to fight into, and his jungle confirm is pretty strong as well. Being able to like instantly eat a mid harpy, so you basically confirm mid harpy control, is pretty strong. But he also struggles with similar problems with like Arachne and Alquang, where they don't have like a set hard CC they can drop when they ult or when they blink in, so they have to drop their ultimate. At least Baka has to drop his ultimate when he blinks in, and then if the enemy team happens to have like a sprinter shell, you're not really gonna get the kill. So, plus mid-guardian mill is definitely a strong item into Baka. Next up is Baron Samedi. He's super strong. He can play mid to a decently like A tier, A plus extent with his ultimate alone. But really what I'm talking about when I talk about Baron is Baron solo is super strong. He's able to control fights really well with his healing and his damage and his CC. He just has a lot as a solo mage. He's one of the pinnacle of he's the pinnacle of solo lane mages, I think. I think he's one of the best. Him and like Zhang Kui are probably one of the best solo lane mages, especially for team fights. His ultimate is super strong. He's able to do so many things. He can look to pull squishies closer to his team. He can look to pull the front line away from the enemy's back line. He can look to just blow up a target with his pull. Just he's got a very versatile ultimate, and it's really hard to punish him for using it because, you know, it lasts for 3.5 seconds and he gets like 15% to 20% damage mitigation while using it. So he's a lot tankier when he's on that coffin. Not to mention his Asteria allows him to deal insane amounts of damage even while building a lot of tank, and his healing is just absurd. Just a lot of aspects of his kit are really strong, and because of that, makes a really strong solo laner / utility mage. Next up is Bastet. Bastet's alright. Similar problems as like the other assassins that are lower here. No hard CC off of Blink. Her late game is super bad with. She basically just does not have an ultimate late game. Cats die too quickly to have any sort of impact. Her early game is super strong, but most assassins have similarly strong early games or have just better late games to make up for it. So that's not worth the effort, especially now that she can't like backdoor Titan or backdoor Phoenixes with her ultimate. She's just not as strong. Next up is Bellona. Bellona has just always been and always probably will be like a solid soul laner. She does well into like auto attacking comps. She's really the pinnacle of anti-auto attack. She's not as strong as she used to be, but she still has her moments. Eagles Rally is strong. Her kit in general like is inherently strong. It's just like not the best, which is why she's not higher in the tier list. Next is Cabrakan. Cabrakan's going through it. Really going through it. He really has no viability anywhere. I think that just comes down to how much of like a pen meta it is and how close range Cabrakan CC is. It being a pen meta hurts like tanky targets enough, but it hurts Cabrakan even more because he has to like walk at you with his CC, and he also has to take damage for some of his CC to be effective. He does have really good like area denial, area control with his ultimate, but it's probably most of the times not worth picking him in general because he just dies. Next up is Camazotz. Camazotz is an assassin that really has to snowball in order to have the impact that is really desired out of him. He really requires a snowbally like aspect. He does some good damage. Especially if he does start snowballing. His vampire bats can hit really hard, and he's able to really push his lead if he does start snowballing. Once he gets his ult up, he's able to dive towers with really relatively no risk. So there's something to think about there. I think the biggest part of Camazotz's kit that puts him at a chance for higher tiers is his large amount of sustain that he has. I think that maybe in the future we might see more in the solo again. We saw him at the start of Season 5, but then he did get nerfed, so we might never see him in the solo again, but we might see him a little bit more in the solo with the new recent changes. Depends on how people are feeling and how they want. But right now he's just going to stick to A because I haven't seen much of the character. Next is Kerberos. Kerberos is a solid pick. He can work decently in the support and works well in the solo lane. His ultimate's super strong. He does a decent amount of damage. Biggest issue with him in lane is if his clear gets like his second ability, Ghastly Breath, gets like silenced out or CC'd out, then he really lacks clear. But he can usually counteract this by maxing his 1 first. So he's fine. There are better characters in both the solo and support, but he does definitely do his job, which is like be similar to characters like Ares and Jing Chen, which is like have that big AoE ultimate and always put fear in the enemy whenever you blink. Kerberos is strong. Next is Kerberos. Kerberos is he's definitely the pinnacle of average. His 1 has 4 average like stims. His 2 is an average damaging ability. His 3 is an average dash. His ultimate is the only thing that's like, that's pretty interesting. But since it's such a small radius, it might not be as good as like other ultimates in the game. It definitely does have impacts in teamfights though. Being able to silence and disarm characters for like 2 seconds is really strong. But since they can move freely in that, they can just disengage pretty easily, depending on how they're positioned. Krynos ult is strong. His other 3 abilities are pretty average. So he's pretty average as a character altogether. So A tier. Next is Chalk. Chalk is not that great. Really not that great. Not all that. He does things. He does stuff. Early game damage. Yeah, he's there. Late game, he just becomes a walk at you kind of character that really has no threat. Like, he's not that threatening when he walks at you until he has Rain Dance, and then it's like, okay, he's slowing me a bit, and I can't turn on him as easily. But he's still really weak, especially late game. He doesn't provide nearly as much just anything as other solo laners right now. Like, I'm more afraid of a Cocolin walking at me than a Chalk, because Cocolin has 2 forms, one of which provides him with a lot of damage and just guaranteed damage over time, as well as a root, a push, and a tremble. And if he's not even transformed, it's fine because he has anti-heal. He also has the dot damage if he wants, a leap to chase me down further, as well as an ultimate that knocks up and can maybe set up for his carries. So Chalk has the nice ultimate. He's got a good ultimate, but the other 3 abilities in this kit are mediocre. So late game he just becomes a sponge, which other solo laners can do just as well, if not better. Next is Chang'e. Speaking of strong solo laners, Chang'e is definitely pretty strong. Is she as strong as these characters up here? I don't know. I'm going to put her in S- for now. I think she definitely has earned her place as one of the better solo laners. She has a lot of poke with her 1. She has healing with her 3. Complete immunity to everything with her 2. And her ultimate basically wins fights if you hit like 2 to 3 people. So that's super strong. Plus it can secure slash steal objectives pretty easily. Waxing Moon is definitely one of the stronger abilities in the game. But yeah, Chang'e is just pretty strong right now. Being able to buy without even being at base is another big plus side for her. Next is Chernobog. Chernobog is definitely one of the strongest. No, Chernobog is the strongest hunter in the game right now. And he's also the strongest mid laner in the game right now. So being able to play 2 roles to the highest degree, it's kind of absurd. Puts you above a lot of the other characters in the game right now. Being a Chernobog is really potent. You can really have a lot of impact in team fights and just in fights in general, because you can always be in a team fight. That's the important factor. You're able to rotate from any part of the map to any part of the map. So if your team is looking at the Pyromancer and there's a fight that breaks out and it's a 4v4, you can swing that fight and make it a 5v4. Or you can just be there and just rotate back to your lane to defend the split push if it happens. Chernobog has a lot of options. His ult is absurd. The rest of his kit is strong even without the ultimate. His 1-2 combo does a lot of damage, and it gives him like 60% attack speed. His 3 allows him to just be immune to damage for like a solid 3 to 5 seconds. And his ultimate is a whole like another level of bloated. Mitigation, slow, vision, mobility, what else? What haven't I said? Movement speed, and damage from his passive, as well as a cooldown reset. There's so many things that ultimate provides, it's absurd. CC immunity if you want to go there. It provides way too many things. It's also a global, so definitely one of the strongest, not the strongest character in the game right now. Next up is Kairon. Kairon is definitely the opposite of the strongest character in the game right now. I think that because Kairon has a cleanse, he's going to be an A tier. I don't think he can be worse than A tier, because characters like Anhur reside there. I think Kairon has a specific niche of countering like super telegraphed initiations with his 1, and I think that niche is pretty interesting for a hunter to have. He can be played in both mid and ADC to like an extent, and because of that he gets a little bit more clout. Kairon is definitely like, what's it called, a support-esque ADC is the best way I can describe it. Like he provides more utility than most other ADCs, but at the cost of a little bit of damage and just being able to be a good ADC. So he definitely has specifically good matchups into like Daji, into Blink ult characters, but with like slow ultimates. So he definitely has good matchups into those, but if those aren't in the meta, he himself isn't that great in the meta. Next up is Kronos. Kronos is strong, I think. Kronos is pretty strong. He can be played in both mid and ADC pretty well, so there's that. He's just the farm bot for most of the game, but once he comes online, he starts swinging pretty hard. And that ultimate makes him really hard to kill because he basically has 2 lives with it. And if they have a good support, he'll basically have 3. So like a Khepri Kronos is super strong because Kronos gets 3 lives to do 3 different things and play it in 3 different ways if you want. But Kronos' early game is definitely weak. His weak point is his early game, so that's why he's not too much higher. If he had a strong early game and strong late game like Chernobog or something, he'd definitely be higher, but his early game is mediocre, so he's only an A+. Next is Cuchulainn, probably the best soul in the game right now. Definitely the best warrior in the game. Having 2 kits makes you strong. Having 2 kits that you can dump right one after the other is also super strong. You can dump your entire kit while you're unraged, take a little bit of damage and do a little bit of damage, become raged, dump an entire other kit, and then you can trans back and maybe, if the team fight goes on long enough, dump your kit a 3rd time, which is super strong. You're just doing a lot of damage and you're being a really big nuisance to the enemy team. Plus, he synergizes really well with Glad Shield, a pretty strong item in the solo right now. And he's just a really strong bully. He's really got it all. Next is Cupid. Cupid is pretty bad, pretty awful, especially in the sprint meta. His ultimate's really not doing much. Even from the center, I think you can sprint out of it if your support casts sprint immediately as he casts it. The biggest issue with Cupid is that, similar to Honor, he's an ability-based hunter, but his early game clear is pretty bad. Most of the time you'd think ability-based hunters have, like, good clear, but Cupid does not. His clear is really bad, and because of that, he really struggles in the laning phase early on, usually losing pressure to other hunters, and Cupid with that pressure is fine, but having pressure in dueling is super valuable because you're able to just, like, have control over the Gold Fury Pit for the early game, and also have control over the enemy's buffs, potentially, in the early game, and that's always valuable, because teams right now are looking to get ahead through red buff invades, through early Gold Furies, and whatnot. And having control over the left side jungle early game is super beneficial. Next up is Daji. Daji has her, like, pros. Daji also has her cons. I think once you get past the early game where her clearing is pretty bad, I think she has potential to be a strong character, especially with that ultimate and the amount of damage she can put out. She definitely has, like, potential. Her ultimate's really good at burning beads. If they don't burn beads, it's really easy setup for a mage ult. It's really easy to tell where they're gonna end up because it's a pretty tall ass pillar that's glowing and stuff. So enemies that are pulled are a pretty easy target. Daji without her ultimate is pretty strong without it. She's got decent enough damage, and she does have a lot of, like, burst, as well as a lot of just chase down potential with her 3. Her biggest issue is from behind. Daji does struggle quite a bit, because not only is her jungle clear worse than most other junglers right now, it also makes it harder for her to catch up, and her damage from behind isn't nearly as potent as her damage from, like, on par or her head. So that's something to keep in mind when playing against or with a Daji. Her level 1 is super weak. Next up is Discordia. I think Discordia is strong right now. She's one of the top 5 mages for sure. Her and Agni are pretty similar, but I think Discordia is a little bit worse early game, so a little bit worse on the tier list. Both pretty close, though. Discordia, as the name suggests, provides a lot of chaos. She really just, like, disrupts the enemy team, whether it be through her ultimate or through her Strife. She just does have a lot of disruption. Her damage is also really strong once you hit the later stages of the game. And defending or sieging Discordia is pretty potent, especially defending, because she's able to just poke out at the opponents and lock them down long enough, just maybe long enough for them to get bursted. Her biggest weakness probably is the fact that her leap, like her, whatever it's called, sporadic behavior or whatever, doesn't go as far as, like, an Agni dash or Thoth dash. So she's not as safe in lane early game as other mages. But she does have Golden Apple of Discord to try and bail her out. And she has a decent amount of self-peel. It's just, it might not be enough depending on how strong the assassin she's playing against is. Next is Erlang Shen. Erlang Shen can play 3 roles: solo, support, and jungle. He can play jungle well, support alright, and solo pretty poorly. But he can still play 3 roles, technically. His jungle is definitely the reason you'd pick him, but he can be played in support quite well. His early game in the jungle is pretty much uncontestable. Only characters like Neja and, like, Camazotz or Osiris could probably contest him in the jungle early game. He does a lot of damage with Crusher, and Crusher synergizes really well with his kit. His early jungle clear is pretty strong, and his early boxing potential is really strong as well. The flaws he have is, like, as every early game jungler goes, your late game, not as strong. Especially, like, damage-wise, you're going to fall off a lot harder than, like, a Thor or Ratatoskr, because you're a warrior, you don't do as much damage. But on the flip side, you are going to be a little bit tankier than characters like Thor or Ratatoskr if you do choose to build tankier into the mid to late game. So, it's really dependent on that. Erlang can also definitely set up kills because 3/4 of his kit is CC. He's got a root, he's got a knock up, and he's got a taunt. He does lose out on DPS if he does go for some of the CC though, especially with his 3. If he doesn't use Mink form, he's losing out on a lot of DPS. Next up is Fafnir. Fafnir is strong right now in my opinion. Definitely one of the stronger supports, I'd say. Oh, whoa. Oh god, that's super aggravating. Let me just fix that real quick. AMC was A minus. Upwash was A tier, I think. Amaterasu A on her. Anubis was B tier. Yeah, this is my bad. I don't know what happened. Okay, you're gonna sit there. Akwang is A. Aphrodite. Apollo. Arachne. Ares. Artemis was S, right? Yeah, I think Artemis was S. Artie was A. Athena was S. Willish A. Bacchus A minus. Bacchusur A minus. Baron Samdi was S, not S plus, what the heck? He was S tier, I'm pretty sure. Bestet was A minus. Bologna A plus. Kabrakin was B. Kamazats was A tier. Kerberos was A. Kernunos A. Chalk was A. No, Chalk was B tier, I'm pretty sure. No, he was A minus. Chunga was S minus. Chernobog was S plus. Chiron was A. Kronos was A plus. Kukulin. Cupid sucked. Dodgy had potential, I said. Discordia. Erlong, I think I was just on Erlong. Put him in A plus. And now we're on Fafnir. So we're back. Thank you, Smite Guru, for doing that for me. I really did want to go through my tier list again to make sure. Really enjoyed it. Appreciate it. We have Fafnir on the scoreboards. I think Fafnir's strong. Double Hunter's strong. So Fafnir is going to be strong as long as Double Hunter is strong. I said strong a lot there. Fafnir, pick him for the course, and that's really the main reason you pick him. His only weakness really is his early laning phase. It's pretty weak compared to other Guardians. His lane clear is really not all that. But he is able to bring it in the mid game to the late game with his objective shred on his course. Like I said before, Draconic course is super strong in team fights. Just allows you to out DPS your opponents most of the time. And Double Hunter being more popular right now makes him a stronger pick. Definitely a strong character in support. Next up is Fenrir. Fenrir. I don't know. Fenrir is like a character. I'll put him in A. I think that's a fair enough like placement to put him in. Fenrir in A. I don't know if he has the tools necessary to be higher than that. He does have the early damage, but if he gets behind, it's kind of hard for him to do much. Fenrir from behind doesn't do as much. He can be built Bruiser. That's pretty cool. I don't know. I just haven't seen a lot of Fenrirs, but I don't think he's like weaker than A. So I'll have to wait and see. Definitely a character that can be experimented with and see if you can make use of his like intricacies, but for now I'll put him in A. Freya's top notch character. She definitely does a lot of damage. S plus might be a little overrating her, especially with the recent nerfs, but I don't want to put her in S because I think that's a bit underrating her. She's like in between S plus and S right now, in my opinion. She's definitely not as good as Chernobog, but definitely better than like Artemis and Athena and Baron and stuff. So I'll put her in S plus. She just has a lot of burst. Her 2-1 combo is insane. Her lane clear is good because her 2 now goes through abilities. She has really good sustain, like mana and health. And her ultimate's a get out of jail free card. That also allows her to do return damage, so she can look for like a return kill at least. Her whoop sets up like everything. Biggest issue that she has now is the same issue she had before, is her tower pressure. But this gets countered nicely because she's no longer an ADC player or an ADC character anymore. She's more of a mid lane character. So she doesn't have to worry about that. Next up is Ganesh. Ganesh. I think Ganesh is A+. I think Ganesh definitely, the silence, I think, makes him one of the stronger supports in the game. Being able to just, like, lock down, or not lock down, but, like, disrupt enemy abilities is a super strong capability. His ultimate also provides a lot of zone control. Like, you can control an entire area. Like, you can control an entire intersections if you place it in the jungle. It also does a decent amount of damage early to mid game, and late game it shreds protections, like 55 protections late game is super strong, plus the 40% slow, or 35% slow, I mean. He's super strong there. His early game laning phase is alright. Not the best, not the worst. Pretty average. His dash is probably, like, the weakest part of his kit, I'd say. Not being able to set up for yourself on your ultimate is nice. Like, if you catch someone on the line with your dash, it's nice. But the dash is kind of slow, and if you use it too aggressively, you can definitely get, like, blown up. He's definitely good into characters that, like, have pretty telegraphed abilities, or, like, telegraph CCs. So, like, characters like Athena and Terra, he does really well into. I think that he does have his place in the meta, and I think that I'm underrating him a bit, but I don't know. We'll have to see. I love Ganesh. I think he's a little bit, he might even be a little bit higher, but I'm not 100% sure. Geb is also an A+ in my opinion. He does fine. He does well. He does well. Biggest issue with Geb is his early game. You'll hear it time and time again. Geb's early game is not that great. It's not even only due to the lane clear. It's also due to the fact that he's really easy to kill early game. So he's a pretty prime target throughout that early phase. Especially if they pick, like, a super aggressive support. It's really hard for Geb to fight into that. Once he powers through the early game, he's able to do what he's supposed to do, which is just make sure nobody dies and make sure to peel when necessary, but also set up when necessary. His ultimate's super strong. 1 second to 2 second stun in that AoE is absurd. Really good setup for characters like Ra, Thoth, and Giannis, Snipes, and all those characters. Does well with Blink, but does have a little bit of a reliance on Blink if he wants to initiate. If he's counter-initiating, then it's fine, but if he wants to initiate a fight, he does require Blink. Besides that, he's got one of the strongest abilities in his kit, which is his shield. Really provides a lot of self-appeal for his allies. Something that most other supports can't do. Next is Guan Yu. Guan Yu is definitely underrated a bit, but he doesn't get as much pressure as other warriors in the lane. So it's understandable that he's not picked like every game. He does good damage with his Tallow Assault and his whatever his 2 is called. He also provides healing, so that's pretty nice. And his ultimate, Cavalry Charge, is really strong, especially in team fights. You're able to set up, you're able to peel, you're able to initiate, disengage, whatever you needed to do. It's pretty versatile in that sense. Yeah, it's Guan Yu. It's pretty strong. He's got some bad matchups into, like, aggressive solo laners, but once he gets to the mid to late game, he's doing well. He's one of the best team fight solo laners in the game right now. Next is Hachiman. Hachiman is strong. He's got a strong ultimate, like similar to Guan Yu. That horse allows him to be super safe in lane. Really hard to punish him if he pushes up. I don't know what else there is to say about Hachiman. He's just good, but, like, not OP. He's got versatility when it comes to builds. He can build anything. Similar to Rom. Him and Rom are pretty similar when it comes to just, like, character design and just, like, how they function. Both are pretty safe. Both do well late game. Both do decent early game. Not as well as some other hunters, but do fine enough. Hachiman has more ability damage, but Rom has more late game damage, so they're pretty similar in that regard. Next up is Hades. Not that great, is what I'll say, for sure. Um, his ultimate's just weak Baron ult, man. Really, really weak Baron ult. Hades, dude, I don't know, because like you do have that pull which controls fights, but if you don't die while you're getting while you're pulling enemies, then it's good. But so many characters right now have like a leap, a dash, or a CC immunity in their kit that it's really just hard for Hades to hit every tick of his ultimate and to keep people trapped. Plus, not being able to like move while ulting really sucks. What else is there to say about Hades? I mean, his kit is pretty like his kit is pretty close ranged as well. His 3 and his 1 both have relatively small areas, and once you leap in, either you die or they die, and if you're behind, you're dead. You're dead if you're leaping in. So it's pretty hard for Hades to do much right now. Just a pretty weird, awkward time for him. Next up is Habwa. Habwa is strong. He's easy, so he's better in jungle than in mid right now, but he can play both roles. It's just his damage. His damage is really strong right now, and that allows him to do a lot just against the team. Being able to use water spout into water cannon does roughly like 50% early game, 60-70% mid game, and like 80 to 90 late game. You know, he's doing a lot of damage, and it's hard to camp a Habwa in the jungle because, you know, he's the jungler. You could be in any portion of the map. The biggest way to counter Habwa is to not let him get fed. That's the important thing. Is if he doesn't get fed, he'll be relatively quiet compared to other assassins or other junglers in right now. Like if like a Ratatosker or like a Neja gets fed, you'll feel that really hard, and if they don't get fed, you will still feel their damage. If a Habwa doesn't get fed or gets behind, it's like you don't feel it as much. Like you don't feel his damage as much as you would a other assassin. Also, a Habwa like lacks a dash outside of his ultimate, and if he's using his ultimate as an escape, then you're winning fights most of the time. So just being able to force his ultimate as an escape rather than as a damaging tool is usually his biggest weakness. Next is Hal. Hal is alright. She's doesn't do as much as other mages in the solo lane, in my opinion. I think that I haven't experimented with her, or I haven't seen her used enough to say that she's like bad in the solo lane. I just think that she's worse than like a Chang'e. I'd much rather have a Chang'e or like even an Aphrodite over Hal. Biggest reason is that Hal doesn't have an ultimate. So characters like Chang'e and Aphrodite, these are the other two staple healer mages. Even Baron is got a heal, so you can consider him a healer mage. Their ultimates are all super strong. Like most of the mages in the solo lane have really strong ultimates. Hal not having an ultimate in just period really hurts her. And she's also a mage, so the 6 abilities won't really allow her to get as much pressure in the lane. I think her one saving grace is the fact that she has a cleanse. And if people start using that cleanse in like creative ways, she might rise in the ranks, but right now she's an A- character. Next up is Hercules. Hercules is strong. Definitely top 3 solo laners, at least when it comes to warriors for sure. I'd say the list for solo goes like Cucullin, Baron Samedi, Zhang Kui, Herc, Chang'e, Achilles. I think that's like top 5-ish. That's like 6. But like that's basically I think the solo tier list right now. Hercules is pretty strong. He's the only character that can like box a Cucullin, and that's pretty important to think about. His pull push is super strong setup. It fulfills a similar function to like Baron Ultimate, where you just pull a couple characters out of position. But Hercules is a lot faster. It's a lot scarier too. Being pull pushed into tower hurts a lot. And Hercules' damage in general is just pretty insane. His ult has like 800 base damage plus like 100% scaling or something. His 1 is like 350 base plus 90% scaling. And he can also soak up hits really nicely with his mitigate wounds. So he's just got a pretty strong kit, and he's able to be a lane bully, but also transition decently well into a late game. He's like a standard solo laner that you would just want. Next up is Ho Yi. Ho Yi. Ho Yi's good. The reason he's not better is because he requires skill. This is a weird thing to say, but the less skill a character requires, the less chance for error exists. This is important because the less chance for error, the better it is, because you're less likely to make an error, right? So I'd much rather play like an Artemis or Chernobog, characters that are easier than like Hu Yi, where if I miss a double bounce or like I don't get the double bounce on, you will be losing DPS and therefore you might lose the fight kind of character. Like Hu Yi's strong just because of the fact that his abilities just deal a lot of damage, but also his autos deal a decent amount of damage, and he's also like Hu Yi. He has aspects of his kit that just make him strong. He just has, like, in order to reach his full potential, he requires more skill than, say, an Artemis. So, he's not as strong as Artemis because of that. But he's definitely a strong character. Next is Hunbats. Hunbats fulfills a very strange niche as an assassin, which is the teamfight assassin niche. Something that's fairly rare, but Hunbats does fulfill it quite nicely with that Fear No Evil. One of the best teamfight ultimates in the game for sure. Definitely allows him to like control a fight and just deal a lot of damage as well, because once he gets to the mid game, once he gets past like level 7, he's doing a good amount of damage. Early game, he's not the best assassin early game. Once he gets past it, he's able to deal a lot of damage, especially with his new passive, having guaranteed damage over like crit damage or chance-based damage is really strong. Similar to Artemis. Also, his clear got better because now you have guaranteed damage over crit damage. So if you don't crit in the early clear rotations, back then it would have cost you a lot, but if you did crit, you would have probably won the early clear rotation. Now it's better because he's guaranteed the damage, so there's a higher chance that he's gonna outclear his jungle opponent. Not usually, because depending on the jungler, most of them have better clear than Hunbats, but Hunbats still has good clear. Biggest problem with Hunbats, probably, that's holding him back from being higher on the list, is, besides his early game, is like how telegraphed his second ability is. So, and also how like weird the monkey is coded. It's a very strange ability. The Sacred Monkey, the Sacred Monkey's code is pretty strange. But besides that, just being able to blink ult makes Hunbats like an A tier character at least, and then the rest of him is an A+. Next up is Isis. Isis is underrated in my honest opinion. I think that she does provide a good amount of like utility as well as a good amount of damage to a team. Biggest issue with Isis is probably her lack of like long range poke that other mages are just better at than her, and I think other mages are valued more than her because of it. Like, if you look at Agni, Thoth, Giannis, some of the top mages, they all have the long-range poke that's pretty easy to hit. Isis Spirit Ball, from, like, max range, Isis Spirit Ball is gonna do a lot of damage because, you know, it scales off of range. But it also is gonna be fairly hard to hit, and because of that, it's just kind of, like, barely does the damage, because unless someone's, like, CC'd into it, or, you know, she aims it really nicely, or they just happen to walk into it. It's pretty rare that any of that's gonna happen, unless like you're initiating. So Spirit Ball, not the best poke ability. What does help in the late game, because Isis is really considered a late game mage, is their Circle of Protection. I think that ability allows her to both defend and siege really well. That ultimate provides such a good team fight like bonus for your team, and it also is a good like just zone control. Dropping the circle of protections, you're able to provide protections for your allies, or I think it's mitigation. And you also, once you pop it, provide a heal. Enemies that are in the radius when it's popped take a lot of damage. So it's just a really good ultimate that can swing team fights in your favor if it works out correctly. If it doesn't, well, then you might have lost your team the game. Depends. Next up is Izanami. Pretty weak, pretty weak, pretty weak. It's really her auto attacks, the way they work, really make her weaker than other characters. Having the front and back swing means that opponents are going to mitigate the damage she deals twice over. So, like, let's just take this as an example. Like, Rom and Izanami are boxing, right? Let's say Rom does 100 damage in auto, and Izanami does, let's say, 100 damage in auto with the front and back. Rom can mitigate, let's say, like, 10 damage, right? And so can Izanami, right? Let's just, like assuming, right? Hypothetically. So if Rom hits Izanami with an auto, Izanami is going to mitigate 10 of it. So 100 damage auto minus 10 is 90, right? Izanami hits one auto, and she does 80 damage, because the front swing does 75 minus 10, so 65. And the back swing does, what, 15? No, 25, I mean. Backswing does 25 minus 10, so 15. So then Izanami is doing a total of 20 less damage, whereas Rom is only doing 10 less damage. That's a pretty big problem. Another problem, just like mechanically with Izanami, is the fact that the time that she's like most likely to win a boxing match is when her one's activated. When her one's not activated, she also has like longer basic attack movement penalty. The 50% movement penalty lasts for longer on Izanami than other hunters because of the fact that her auto attack animation is longer because she has to catch the backswing as well. Her early game is definitely fairly strong because she's able to outclear most hunters, and she also has a super long ranged line ability that slows, allowing her to hit more autos. It's just harder for her to box compared to other characters because of the way that her basic attacks are designed. The best thing that the mechanic of this does, though, like, the best... Okay, let me rephrase that to make it sound like proper English. The best thing about Izanami's basic attack mechanic is the fact that she has double the crit chance, but it's not necessarily worth it because, you know, they also reduce double the damage of what they would normally mitigate. So Izanami really is reliant on her first ability in boxing matches, and that's not always good. Next up is Giannis. Giannis is... Do I put him in S? I'm putting him in S-. He's definitely the best S- mage in the game, though. A lot of utility, a lot of mobility, a lot of damage. I'd say his early game's a little rough, though. But his late game more than makes up for it. It's Giannis. He's been here for like 4 seasons now, 5 seasons. I mean, so people know what he does, and he's been strong. He's been strong for a while, and I think he'll continue to be strong. Just being able to walk through walls and make allies walk through walls is just strong. Jingwei. I think that Jingwei is decent. Jingwei definitely has aspects of her kit. Aspects of her kit that allow her to be a high tier hunter. I think the safety that she has as a character is one of the biggest things that she has going for her. Her ultimate allows her to basically leave any situation. Her 3 is really good, and it also counts as the best CC in the game. Her 1 is decent poke. It also has a knock-up, so it can set up for autos. Her 2 just makes autos easier to hit and also does decent AoE damage and makes her have a chance to crit. So Jingwei definitely has parts of her kit that really like benefit her. She's also really good at farming with her passive. Like, her passive allows her to just back to base whenever she wants, farm back camps, like rotate to lanes quicker, make sure she misses out on as little farm as possible. The biggest problem with Jingwei, I mean, she doesn't really have like flaws. The biggest thing is that she's just not as good as other hunters when it comes to like playstyle, hunter playstyles at least. Like compare her to an Artemis. Artemis has a lot more like team fight CC than she does, and that's probably her biggest flaw. Team fight CC. She doesn't have that. Her ultimate's a good escape, but not really good at like stunning anyone. So, eh. Next is Kali. Kali, I think, is underrated in the early game, overrated in the late game. Definitely an annoying character to play against, but you've heard me say it time and time again. You'll probably hear me say it again. Midgardian Mail is an item. Kali doesn't like that item. It really hurts her DPS. She can build ability based, and that does help her a bit. But I don't know. She's kind of like if you build her ability based, there are better assassins to do that. Like you can just build like Neja or Susano ability based and have the same impact as a Kali, if not more of one. But Kali is definitely strong, and I think there's potential that Kali's higher on the list, but there just needs to be some experimentation maybe to see if Kali can get there. Next up is Capri. I don't know, man. I don't know. I feel like Capri's S-, but I might be trolling if I put him there. Because y'all know that I have a bias towards Capri. And I think Capri's strong. I really like Capri. Fuck it. I'm going to put him in S-. Capri, I love him. He's super cool. He's got a lot of peel. And his ultimate basically can swing fights in your team's favor. Biggest thing about Capri, I think, that I like about him is that his 2 makes your other frontliners as well as your backliners more tanky. And it's actually a good amount of like fucking mitigations. It's like 30% mitigation. And he also has good CC, like his root. Good peel, his 1 good peel, and his early to mid game, like CC wise, is strong because early to mid game you're only looking for like a pick or 2, and maybe off of those you can get a Gold Fury. That's what I like about Capri right now, is that his CC is really good at setting up early game and really good at peeling late game. His biggest flaw is the lack of like a AoE CC ultimate. You know, like when you think of Guardian, you think of like a Gebel, but Capri doesn't really have much AoE CC. So you kind of need to draft like a solid frontliner in like your solo laner. But if you have that, I think Capri is always a solid pick. He has some weak matchups in like lane, but usually he's able to outclear and avoid too many tussles that are unfavorable. Next up is Kukulkan. Kukulkan, yeah, he's just worse Hebo or Habwa, or however you want to pronounce it. Ultimate, harder to hit than Habwa's. 3, has no knockup. Bigger AoE than Habwa, but slower cast. So people can usually walk out of it unless they're afflicted by your slow. And early game it just doesn't do as much like burst damage as Habwa. His 2 is very similar to Hebo, giving like slow immunity as well as like a sort of sprint basically. But Kuku's sprint basically only affects himself. It doesn't affect any nearby allies like Habwa's Carpet does. And it also like decreases in effectiveness over time. So it's not very good. Kuku's 1 is pretty similar to Habwa's 1. I think the explosion radius for Kuku's 1 is smaller than Habwa's though, so it's probably not as strong to get that ability compared to Habwa's. But it does have a slow, and I think Kuku's 1 is definitely his best ability. Next is Kumbhakarn. Kumbhakarn is definitely strong. Definitely one of the stronger Guardians in the game. He might even be S-. I might be underrating him, but I think that Kumbhakarn definitely has a really strong like early game, especially before waves meet, because of his root. Being able to use that just like even as just fake pressure can be super strong, because you're able to just completely zone out opponents in a like a 55 feet radius. His Mez is a super strong like CC to peel. His root's there for setup, and his Mez is there to peel, and his ultimate can do both. Very strong ultimate. Just similar to Neja, remove a player from the fight, whether it be like a tanky target or like a, what's it called, a squishy. He's removing them from the fight, and it also does decent damage, so you can look for kills after that. In the like 3v3, where it's like the mid jungle support, Kumba definitely has one of the best mid jungle support 3v3 skirmish. He's definitely one of the best there. His ultimate allows him to set up for his mage super easily, and then his Mez and his root allow him to peel super easily. So he's got that going for him. His passive is interesting. Can save him if you're lucky. If you're not, well, his passive is probably worse than it, or bad. So he's pretty strong. He's pretty strong. Biggest weakness is most of his CC is super close ranged, similar to like Kabrakan. His longest range CC is his 2 with the 55-foot long root. That's pretty wide as well. So he kind of relies on Blink a bit, but besides that, he's got a pretty strong kit. Next is Kuzenbo. I think he's a little underrated, especially in the Soul Lane. I think Kuzenbo definitely has potential, especially with his reflect damage. The problem with Kuzenbo is that he really relies on Thorns to be good, and Thorns is not the best relic right now, so I don't think that it's necessarily that great for Kuzenbo. I'm trying to think. Kuzenbo's 3 does a lot of damage, deceptively a large amount of damage if you push an enemy through the wave. His Nanya Cap is decent enough clear. If it gets blocked, then it kind of sucks. Yeah, that's about it for Kuzenbo. He's alright. I think if Hunter mids become more and more of a thing, he'll become better and better, because he does well into those. Loki is a bad character. I don't want to see Lokis in my game. Medusa's good. Medusa's strong. She can play mid and ADC well. She's got the lane clear. She's got the pressure. She's got the mobility with her passive. With the new Viper Strike or Viper Shot change, she's able to do more late game. And her ultimate is strong. Either the opponent gets stunned for 2 seconds, or they get slowed for like 25 to 30% or something. It's pretty strong, and it does a good amount of damage, and it's pretty easy to hit. So a lot of pros for CC immunity, you know. Next up is Mercury. Mercury is strong. Does have a strong late game, does have a decently strong early game. Really, once he hits level 5, that's when he becomes super scary. He's able to maneuver around the map well with that ultimate. He's able to gank from positions that most other junglers can't gank from. Getting hit by Sonic Boom, like a 3-man to 4-man Sonic Boom in a late game team fight, can cost your team can cost the enemy team the fight. Your ultimate does a lot of damage. It sets up for almost anything, because you know they're stunned and stuff, and it also allows you to auto them down with your crit late game. So Mercury's strong. Once he gets the crit online, he's hidden like a truck. Early game is not even that bad, because once he gets level 5, he's able to make an impact on a map. Neja is definitely stronger than Mercury, mainly because she got buffed without getting nerfed, and because of that, she really has one of those kits where it's like, yikes, you know. Neja's jungle clear is the best. It's pretty much uncontestable, I think. I don't know any other character that can clear as fast as Neja. He gets movement speed from his ring toss, so he clears the buff, ring tosses it, and then movement speeds away, but he also gets movement speed from his passive, as well as power from his passive, so he's doing even more damage, and he has basically 20 power and 10% movement speed is basically boots, like half of boots, just in his passive alone. And that's super strong, especially in early trades, where you basically win against any other assassin because you have the passive. Your passive's up. Neja does really well, like just playing super aggressive. He can take someone out of the fight. He can one-shot someone with his ultimate. Super strong, super strong. Really, but he is an all-in assassin, and this is where his like one flaw comes in, is if he's behind, he's he's a lot easier to deal with, like compared to other assassins from behind, because other assassins from behind can do things like Thor can still build like tanky and set up walls from across the map. Nezha has to get all up in your face to deal any sort of damage. So if he's behind, you can just blow him up. The biggest thing, the reason Nezha is so strong even with that, is that it's really hard for Nezha to get behind. Like, the Nezha player has to misplay pretty hard in order to get any further behind than like even, because Nezha's passive makes it so that he basically controls the early game. And if you're not controlling the early game as Nezha, it's difficult, but you still have the CC to help out your team. You can set up for kills. So it's not like, but he's definitely strong. Definitely the third strongest character in S+. Next up is Neith. Neith is alright. She definitely is an ability-based hunter. You can tell because she has abilities that deal damage. She can play mid and ADC both decently. The main reason you'd pick her is for that ultimate. Really good setup from cross map. If you have like any sort of like communication with your team, you could communicate when Neith should ultimate, or when Neith is ulting, when to initiate and whatnot. If you can utilize Neith ult well, then she's a strong character. Biggest thing holding her back is her backflip. Really telegraphed, really slow. Really easy to punish kind of ability. It really doesn't provide her with much mobility at all. So that's the main thing holding her back, but she's definitely strong. She's definitely strong. Next up is Nemesis. Nemesis is strong. Sorry, drinking some water. Nemesis does have tools in her kit. She definitely has that ultimate. Makes it really easy to kill someone if whoever she's targeting. She ults a target, and they're basically free to kill. Nemesis 2 slows, so that's cool. Nemesis 3, good for trading. And her double dash allows her to chase down kills. Nemesis all around strong. Does lack hard CC though, so she does lack hard CC, but that ultimate more than makes up for it. Next up is Nike. Nike is like a Chalk, but a little bit better. A little bit better than Chalk. A little bit better, just a tiny bit better. Yeah, she clears wave decently. She can survive in lane, but come mid to late game, she's more of just like a walk at you and tank damage kind of character. And there's more useful things to be doing. Like, you can be like Hercules, who tanks damage, but also pull pushes you, or Kukulin, who tanks damage, but also tries to kill you. Nike can take damage and aura, have like the teamfight aura. So late game, she's fine. I don't think, but she's just like not as impactful as other warriors, in my opinion. Next up is Nox, the worst character in the game. Nox is alright. She requires setup to be good. Biggest flaw is the lack of poke. Definitely. Like, in those sieges, and just in general, mages with poke, long-range poke are definitely more valued than characters like Nox, because Nox relies on her whole combo to be hit, and if like either her 2 or 1 is misplaced, she's really not doing any damage. The main thing that saves Nox from being lower on the list is 2 things. Her CC, she has a lot of it. It's pretty strong. Good disruption. And her ultimate allows her to swing fights in her team's favor. Reducing damage and also dealing that amount of damage is pretty strong. Also, it has a long range, so she can use it from far back, something that she lacks with her other abilities. Next up is Nuwa. Nuwa, she's there. She's got aspects of her kit that really work for her. The main ones being like her ultimate allows her to see everyone on the map, as well as apply mage item effects, as well as like Divine Ruin, for example, as well as just like deal guaranteed damage to the enemy team, or pick off characters that are escaping. New ultimate's pretty strong in that. It also provides her escape. It's really versatile. Her claim to fame is the fact that she can like peel for herself quite nicely, similar to like Artemis. She's got the root on her 1, or not on her 1, on her passive. She's got the stun with her clay soldiers plus shining metal combo, and she's got fog to increase her movement speed and or just deal more damage in hopes for a turn and burn. And if all else fails, she's got her ultimate, which gives her like a long ass time banished, so she can't take damage, and also CC immunity, and allows her to like have a pseudo leap basically. There's not much more to say about her. She can play ADC. I don't know how good she is there. I think that Nuwa would be higher on the list, but ever since those Soul Gem nerfs, I don't think she's as good as she used to be. Next is Odin. Odin's the anti-healer god, and will continue to be that. His cage forces an entire relic on the opponents, and if they don't get that relic, it's kind of unfortunate for them. Biggest problem with Odin right now is, like, if you use your Bird Bomb combo, it's likely that you'll just die afterwards, so you just have to be careful when using it. Otherwise, Odin's strong, but he's only strong into, like, healer characters or characters with low mobility. Otherwise, he's probably an average pick or below average pick. Next up is Osiris. Osiris, also fairly strong. He's really strong into low mobility characters. He's able to walk at them and put pressure on them really nicely. Osiris ultimate allows him to completely counter healing. He's able to peel for allies well with his tether and just like make space with that. And he's somewhat of a lane bully, so props to Osiris. Poseidon. Poseidon provides a lot of like control on the battlefield. He's able to drop that whirlpool, proc the Gem of Isolation on 2 to 3 targets, make sure they can't really move. He also has good burst with the Kraken, objective secure if you're not Wolfie, and just all around good damage, good CC, good movement speed. So he's actually pretty slippery because of how much movement speed his Trident provides. Yeah, he doesn't really have like flaws per se. It's just other characters can do more than he can. Next up is Ra. Ra is also strong. We'll just put Raj in here as well. And Ram. We'll put all these R characters in here. Ra, let's start with him. Actually, I think Ram is S-. I think Ram does a lot more than these characters. Ra, he's a healer god. He has the mobility with his passive, movement speed. And he's got some pressure in lane because he outclears most mages with his one. And it's really safe clear too. His ultimate, super strong if you hit it. If you miss it, oh well, unfortunate, you still have your heal. So that's the biggest thing about Ra, is that even from behind he has the heal, which allows him to like, you know, have an impact in fights even if he's not doing as much damage as the enemy mage. The biggest thing that Ra doesn't have is like a dash. If the enemy jungler is committed enough, they can easily dive Ra, hit the CC, and go throw him back into the team. Like if you're Serket, you can taunt him, use your one, ult him. Now he can't heal, and just bull on him from there. You really have to shut down Ra early so that he's only a healer character, so that you can build the anti-heal to counter that part out, and he becomes fairly useless. Just be careful late game. Ra ults always hurt. Next up is Regin. Regin, he's got the leap. He's also really good in lane. He's able to have a large impact there. Really high pressure, similar to Agni. Unlike Agni though, Raijin from behind kind of sucks because his ultimate makes him pretty much a sitting duck. If you're behind his Raijin, you're going to get blown up while ulting. Your damage is still high though. Even from behind, you're able to deal a good amount of damage with this 2-1 combo. But you're not able to use your leap aggressively because you are behind. So that kind of hurts him. But he does have a leap, so although it's not the best, he still has some mobility. Next up is Ratatosker. Ratatosker is good. Raven also pretty good. They both do good. They both can swing fights in favor. I think that Raven, with his recent changes, I'll start with him because I actually play him. Well, I used to play him. Is that Raven's recent changes might make him worse late game because he's less tanky, but I think they made him better early game because he does more damage, especially with auto-attacking. So, I don't know if Raven's actually better or worse now. I think that Raven might be a little bit stronger than he was before. Oops. Just mainly because of the amount of damage he does with auto-attacks. He can clear faster. Clearing was kind of an issue with Raven, but now that he has more, like he can auto-attack quicker, His clear is not as weak as it used to be, so he does have benefits there. Um, Robin also has the ultimate, does a lot of damage, like absurd amounts of damage mid to late game, even early game, just all game it just does a lot of damage. Late game it's just risky to use offensively because you can get blown up even with the mitigations because you're an assassin now, and I think that's where the assassin change is going to hurt him a bit, is that he can't use his ultimate as an initiation tool as freely now. But I think that with his 2, I think got a buff, the mid-season patch. Like, I think it has a shorter cooldown now. I think with that change, he's a little bit better. I think that change allows him to be better than most other assassins. Next up is Scylla. Scylla's alright. She's got potential to be higher, but, like, she's average in my eyes. Definitely, if she hits that one ultimate that resets twice and gets a triple kill, then she wins the fight. If she misses that one ultimate and she doesn't get a triple kill, she loses the fight. It's one of those things. Pretty high risk, pretty high reward. Scylla can also get blown up while in her ultimate, which is risky because, her early game is kind of weak as well. Wait, where was I going with the ultimate? She can get blown up and her early game's weak. She does have a root into her crush. It's a pretty easy combo to hit. It doesn't require too much setup, and it does a good amount of damage. Other mages also just deal a lot of damage and have safer range, I'd say. The biggest thing about Scylla, probably, now that I'm thinking about it, is her leap is pretty telegraphed. You can kind of see where she's going to go before she even uses the leap part of her kit. So, not the best. Next up is Serket. I think that Serket is still absurdly strong, even after the nerfs. I think. I might be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure. Definitely does less damage, but she can still have large impacts early game, because she still does a lot of damage early game. Mid game, she's really focused on setting up with her taunt as well as her ultimate. And late game, if she hits a double Cobra Kiss and either blows up a target or just sets up for like a mage, then she's doing her job. So I think Serket has a really interesting power curve where she's looking for kills early game, but late game she's more looking to set up for her team. I think that's a pretty interesting power curve. I think she's still really strong. She's one of the stronger junglers right now. But I don't know what else there is to say besides that. Next is Scotty. Thinking emoji. Scotty's A minus. Definitely does lack mobility, but her ice kind of makes up for it. Her ice is a super strong self-peel ability. If she had CC immunity in her kit, I think she'd be stronger. Because that'd be a lot more self-peel, because if you lock her down, she's probably dead. But she definitely does have a pretty strong kit. Her 1 does a lot of damage and also slows, so sets up for autos and stuff. Her ice rink is just super annoying to deal with, whether you're using it offensively or defensively. And her dog allows her to win more boxing matches than you'd think, because now you have to hit 2 targets and you're getting DPS twice over. And her ultimate, it's kind of annoying. So she has potential to be stronger, but I just don't think currently that she can be stronger, I'm thinking that Ratatosker is actually S-. Yeah, I think Ratatosker is S-. I think that Ratatosker, I underrated him a bit. Global Ultimate allows him to do a lot. With it. And that also means he doesn't necessarily need Blink, because initiate with his ultimate, so he can get Aegis, Sprint, whatever he wants, So I'm gonna put him in S-. Next up is Sobek. Sobek R. Sobek is strong. I think that Sobek is A plus. He's got the pluck, so he's able to, really set up for his team. He's also got peel. Um, and he's also got a good ultimate. He's got a self heal. He can be played in solo and support decently. Biggest thing with Sobek is he's pretty high risk, high reward. Pluck, hit it, you're in business. You're probably killing the target you plucked, unless they're super tanky and your team is super behind. If you miss pluck though, you're dead. You're definitely dead. So Sobek basically is either he dies or the enemy dies, and usually you don't want to be the one dying, so you better hope your enemy dies. Next is Soul. Soul. She's pretty good. She's pretty good. She definitely has a lot of potential to be better, but I think A plus is a good fit for her. She fits this like sort of hunter mage hybrid the most, having a lot of auto attack damage from her passive, but also having a lot of ability damage. So she's really able to like bully out other mages in lane, which is pretty important. Her ultimate, if she gets set up correctly, does absurd amounts of damage, and it can also confirm objectives really well. Let me think. Her disapparate is strong, but it also can leave her vulnerable, because once it goes into the incorporeal form, she's not gonna have the movement speed, so people can just like wait the incorporeal out and just blow her up then. But the movement speed on a 3 definitely does help her with escaping. So all around, I think she's an A plus character. Next is Sun Wukong. Sun Wukong he's similar to Chalk. Wins lane, does nothing else. I don't think there's much more to say about it. Susano. I don't know. I don't know where to put Susano, honestly. I feel like he's strong. I feel like he has potential to be strong. His damage is there. His team fight is definitely there. So yeah, I think Susano's got things. His early game clear is not as good as other junglers though, and I think that's been a trend with some of the lower tier junglers, is that their early game clear isn't as great. But I think Susano definitely has it. Definitely got this. Next is Sylvanas. Yeah, he's alright. Sylvanas is definitely strong. He has some bad matchups. Sobek, I think, is his worst one, but Sylvanas from ahead can definitely do a lot, and he usually does get ahead because of his lane pressure. You just have to be careful, though, because you're a big tree with no mobility, so if the jungler decides to commit on you, you're probably dead if you don't have, like, your ultimate up, sprint up, and stuff. Like, too much CC on the tree, and he's probably dead, It's one of those things. If you get behind a Sylvanas, it's pretty brutal, because you're going to get picked off a lot. You're going to get farmed, basically. But Sylvanas from ahead can definitely put dents in enemy teams, because you get that duo pressure. So there's that to think about. I think that I don't know what else to say about Sylvanas. He's got a lot of he's got good lane clear. That's where he gets his pressure, but he's also got a good amount of setup. His pull, if you get a pull, then you're really not putting much out there. You're not risking too much, but you're also pulling in an opponent into your team, so you can definitely win fights just off of the pull alone. You can also get very many, you can get a lot of picks with the pull, being able to pull root ult or pull ult root, whatever rotation of abilities you want to go through. Is very potent. So Sylvanas, I think, is A+. Next up is Terra. Terra is S-, I'd say. That ultimate provides a lot for her team, and the stun also provides a lot. She really just provides a lot to her team, being the Earth Mother and all. I don't know what I can say about Terra. Her CC's pretty telegraphed. Like when she plants her monolith in a team of 5, like in a group of 5, she's gonna try to root, so you can be prepared for that. Her clap takes quite a bit of time to like come up and stuff. Like it takes a bit of time to like come out of the ground, and then it takes more time to clap together. So you can like try to juke it out. There's really nothing you can do against the ultimate. You're kind of like there, and you just hope that they don't have the DPS or they don't damage you at all, because once she ults, you either hard disengage and hope for the best, or you hard engage and hope for the best, because Terra's ultimate really is one of the best guardian ultimates in the game. It's really strong. Next is Thanatos. He's Thanatos is not that great. I'd say right now Camazotz is better than Thanatos. I don't know what else to say about it. Scythe does cool stuff early to mid game. Late game falls off hard. I think the Thanatos global ultimate is cool, but late game you want to use it more as an execute rather than an initiation. So Thanatos got this like weird awkward scenario that he's in. He can either use it as an initiation, but then now there's no way that anyone's going to get executed, or he can use it as an execute, but then he's sacrificing the stun and the initiation on the ultimate. Not the greatest scenario for Thanatos to be in. Morgan is pretty cool, I guess. I don't know where to rate her. I think with the recent changes, she's A+. She definitely has good enough clear at this point to be like a mid laner, but she can also transform into any character, and because of that, she's super versatile. She's able to do what she needs to do to get things done, you know? Stun on her 1, the bonus damage on her 2 that she doesn't even need to proc. She can like let one of her teammates proc it for her, maybe like a soul laner or a support can proc it and just do a lot more damage that way. Her invis is decent. It allows her to like make some sneaky cheeky plays, but it's also not the best escape in the world, because if you get hit after it, you're definitely dead. Because you lose your mobility, you lose your movement speed, and then at that point you might get your ult forced out of you, or you just might just get relics forced out, or you might just die. So if Morgan had like a dash or like a leap or something, she might be better, but she's alright now. Next up is Thor. Thor is here. Thor is strong. He can dunk on people. He can spin to deal damage. He's got his failsafes. I think that Thor definitely has a lot of strengths, and weaknesses. Late game damage, he falls off a bit. That's about it. He's got strengths. Not very many weaknesses. Just he's an all around solid jungler. Biggest issue with Thor is that he's not as good as some other junglers. That's really it. He's always going to be a decent all around pick. He's never going to be the worst. He's probably, at this point, probably never going to be the best. There might be a time, but right now, probably not. So, yeah, there's Thor for you. Thoth is strong. Ranged poke, range damage, a lot of range damage. Really safe because he's from a range, and he also has a super long range dash, and a stun. Just hard character. If Thoth is out of position, you have to punish him, because otherwise he just is able to free cast. He's super hard to siege into, super hard to siege or like to defend against. He's just all around a super strong character. Just able to just put out artillery damage while you are really not able to do much in return. Definitely one of the strongest mages in the game. Next up is Tyr. Tyr is okay. Tyr is alright. He does the darn thing. His combo is a little bit predictable, you know, it's the 1-2 combo. But he has the stance switch, so he's able to like 1-2 and 1-2 again. So he does more damage than some other warriors. His ultimate's pretty strong. Yeah, it's pretty strong. It's a weaker version of Bellona's ultimate, but it still does a decent amount of damage and has a pretty large AoE. So, yeah. But Tyr's average. Tyr's probably the most like average warrior that I can think of. So, there he is. Next is Uller. Uller can be played in both mid and ADC quite well, and I think that is the reason he goes to A+. He's got a lot of single target burst. Once you hit the axe combo, I think most squishies get knocked down to like 40%, and then he can just auto you down from there. Uller's very scary to play against from ahead, but if he's behind, you're pretty much fine. There's not much you can do. Next is Vomit. Vomit's very good into certain characters, like lower mobility characters. He definitely has his niche against. With the recently changed Atalanta's bow, I think that we might see more Vomit jungle, especially against characters like Raw and characters like Zhang Kui. I think he has a good matchup into, because Zhang Kui is more about the dot damage that he can just Vomit can just heal up, and I think that other low mobility characters that have self peel, like Artemis, for example, I think Vomit will do it well against. Maybe Baron. I think Vomit might have a good matchup into Baron. I don't know though. Neja, I think that Vomit has a good matchup into him. Just a lot of the lower mobility characters that are high on the list right now. Habwa, he definitely has a great matchup into. I think with those characters, I think Vomit with his ultimate is able to just beat them. Early game, he's going to be ability based. Mid to late game, he's going to look for like more of the auto attack trades and win those because of his ultimate. So look out for Vomit in the future is all I'm going to say. Next up is Vulcan. Vulcan is A tier. He's got a good kit. He did recently get majorly buffed. His 1 can now go through walls, and his Inferno Cannon gets 25% penetration. His ultimate is super strong and also super weak. That's because in order for his ultimate to be truly impactful, you have to have a lot of setup, so you have to somewhat build a comp around Vulcan. His early game is also kind of weak compared to other mages because of his 1 not dealing as much damage to wave as some other mages, but once he gets online, his damage is going to be there. His 3-1-2 combo is going to be there, and the only aspect of his kit that requires a lot of setup that he himself doesn't have is his ultimate, so once you get that going, it's easy peasy lemon squeezy. Next is Shibalonke. Shibalonke is strong. When it comes to Shibalonke, the first 3 abilities of his kits is pretty strong. Like, he gets bonus damage on his 1. His 2 is a slow that also applies some tick damage, so that's pretty cool. And his 3 is a CC immunity dash that also does damage. So, pretty aggressive ADC, but what really let me speak English. What really makes him so strong is his global blind that has a chance to stun for 1.5 seconds. That's just the strong part, because being able to like globally blind enemy team, being able to globally blind an enemy team can be really useful, especially if you have like, communication with your team. You can communicate, hey, I'm gonna blind them now. You guys should initiate, say in like the 3v3 in middle. So then you can always use the Shibalonke ult. They will never know like where anything is coming from. So like a raw ult, Thor ult, anything like that, it's gonna be really hard for them to spot it. So in the late game team fights, it's even worse because they're all 5-man group, but they just have to chaotically walk around and hope for the best while the Shibalonke ultimate is going through. Next up is Jing Chen. Jing Chen is he's not doing too great right now. Definitely struggling a bit. Really, his ultimate windup really hurts him a lot. Definitely not the best case scenario for him for sure. I think that he's a little underrated. He's very good at counter initiating, so like characters like Kerberos or Ares, or like any sort of character that goes blink, he can just punish them super hard. You just have to have your team blow up a tank or an initiator, so it's not always the best case scenario. Next up is Ymir. Ymir, I think Ymir, this recent LAN was shown off by Galactic, and how potent Ymir can be if his walls are on point. Ymir definitely has one of the most controlling kits in the game. He's definitely able to control the most amount of space. His ultimate, big circle that does a lot of damage and slows. His 2, nice little carpet area that does damage and slows. His 3 is a cone freeze, so anyone in that area doesn't want to go. And his wall allows him to block off certain characters from certain characters. So you can block off this, like, the front line from the back line. You can really win those jungle fights, the fights around FG, with his wall, because you can isolate a target, or you can split off the team. And that's really strong because you can combo that really nicely with the 2.25 second freeze that he has. The biggest issue with Ymir is his lack of mobility. He can, if he's too out of position, he's just gonna die on cooldown. It's really hard for him to not die a lot because teams will just see him. If he's slightly out of position, teams will just lock him down and kill him, and there's not much you can do about it. Next is Zeus. Zeus is like similar to Zeus is A minus. I think he has potential. I think I've said that about a lot of characters, but Zeus in particular has a good amount of potential. He does a lot of damage with his detonate. You know, that's known. Everyone knows that. But he also has a lot of control of like an area with his ultimate. He's got one of the best like level 3s in the game in the mid lane. So if you can snowball off that, then you're cruising. The biggest thing is if Zeus gets behind and he's no longer able to like one-shot enemy assassins, that's when he loses his effectiveness, because once Zeus is incapable of one-shotting, that's his only form of peel, self-peel, is being able to kill opponents before they can kill him. And so he's similar to Anubis in that sense, but he doesn't have to stand still for any of his abilities, so he's better. Next is Zhong Kui, probably like the third best solo laner in the game right now. Super strong ultimate, allows you to control fights really well, applying Gem of Isolation to everyone. Your card also applies Gem of Isolation and slows for an absurd amount, like 50% before diminishing returns. He also has a strong heal. His stun can go up to 2.2 seconds with card applied. Just all around, his kit is super strong, and he's also pretty tanky with his passive. He's thick as shit. The thing that might hurt him, but not too much, is the Warlock's nerf. I don't think it'll affect him too much in the solo lane, because I don't know, you don't really get to build Warlocks that often in solo, but it might affect him a little bit. But Zhong is still strong, does a lot of damage with ultimate, even when building basically full tank, and is also able to put a lot of like control on the map with his ultimate. But that right there is the tier list. I think that this is a relatively accurate tier list, at least for my opinions. Tell me what you guys think down below, though. This may be accurate in my eyes, but in your eyes, you may think it's completely wrong. You may think that Chalk is the best character in the game. Tell me why. I would love to know. I love having conversations in the comments. I think it's really fun. I think it's super dope. But with that right there is the tier list. Hope you all enjoyed, and hope to see you guys next time. Bye-bye.